Wolves are fully protected under the Endangered Species Act as endangered, which provides a kind of refuge for wolves. Somebody up front here had a question.
I just wanted to put, I wanted to add to what you were saying there. I filmed in Yellowstone for 10 years, and I was there about a year and a half after the first wolf went in there. And my biologist friend of mine, Mike Cameron, and I, we filmed the grizzlies and the wolves and all the other animals up in Yellowstone. And when we first arrived there, we seen thousands and thousands of head of elk in the valleys. And as the years went by with wolf reintroduction, we noticed that those elk herds were being broken up. And so we were seeing herds of 20, 30 at a time, but scattered clear throughout the valley instead of all in one huge group. And if you did the research on that, I think it was back in the 50s that they lost over 50,000 head of elk in Yellowstone because all the predators were gone. And so they overgrazed, and then disease came in and wiped them out. So that's a proof in pudding right there where wolves were absolutely beneficial and absolutely a necessity to keep the herds healthy and to keep them scattered out so they wouldn't overgraze and cause viruses and other diseases that they were going to get from too much feces on the ground or too much vegetation loss. And so then we started seeing them coming back to balance, and it's absolutely amazing. But I would talk to some of the ranchers, in some of the outlying areas and ask them about the wolves, and everybody hated them, and I just couldn't understand what that was about. And so one of the ranchers, I asked him, "Have you seen any wolves?" And he said, "We kill them all. My grandpa killed them, my dad killed them, and I killed them." And I was like, "Well, what's up with that?" I said, "Wolves were here before we were." And he says, "Well, they kill everything. Wolves kill everything." And I looked at him and I said, "If wolves killed everything, there wouldn't have been nothing here when we got here, because they were here before we were. And the grizzlies were running out on the prairies, and the bison, the 300 million bison, had plenty of prey base for the wolves." So we probably had the best, perfect scenario of a balanced ecosystem ever because we weren't involved in it. So I just had to put that in because, everybody says wolves are dangerous, they kill everything, and I just don't believe that at all. I think that you have a perfect balance when you have every single predator or other species, non-game species or game species and predators in the system makes it a complete circle. So that's why I got involved, because I want to see him back.
Thank you for that.
Can I just respond a little bit to that? Yeah, it's interesting. Sometimes things take a long time to regain a balance, and when we had elk populations in Yellowstone, is somewhere between 15 to 20,000 head of elk, and wolves are reintroduced, and then some of the things I have already mentioned occurred. Elk populations began plummeting. Wolf populations actually started going down too. Just in the last few years, it appears, and we won't know until another decade or so passes that we can look back on this, but it appears that the elk populations might have stabilized, and the wolf populations might have stabilized as well, to around about 100 wolves in that northern Yellowstone area. It'll be interesting to see how that happens. It's also interesting that in Rocky Mountain National Park in 1995, the park elk population in Rocky was in the same sort of state as the elk population in Yellowstone, except that no wolves were introduced to Rocky for a variety of reasons I don't have to go into here. But that population also plummeted. But it plummeted because they basically had eaten themselves out of house and home in their winter range. Plus, the park put in a management plan that allowed a little bit of culling to take place in Rocky's elk herd, and they also had a management plan that enabled them to put in these big exclosure fences in some of some of the places in the riparian areas. And if you like the natural appearance of the landscape, you don't want to see elk exclosure fences in a lot of the riparian areas in some of these valleys in Rocky Mountain National Park. Of course, the Park Service doesn't like that either. But they needed to put those enclosures in so that the riparian vegetation would heal itself enough so that perhaps beavers would come back and perhaps raise the water table and so on. But then what happens when that occurs, they take the fences out and elk come back. Is the same thing going to happen? Or can we, maybe by that time we'll have wolves reintroduced to Colorado, and maybe the wolves will take care of the management of the elk, and we won't need those fences anymore. But thank you for your perspective.
Yes. There's something I think of as the Clive and Bundy syndrome. And I think that occurs because you might have a rancher, a lot of good ranchers out there, by the way, I'm not maligning them, but you might have a rancher with several thousand acres of his own property. And then right next door, where he can graze his animals, he rents land from the Forest Service or the BLM, maybe a couple thousand, 3,000 acres to go with his 2,000 acres. And so I don't think they can help it. They get to thinking that all of this land is theirs. It's not theirs. It's my land, it's your land. It belongs to 330 million people. So we're the people who make the decisions. It's up to us as to whether the wolves come back. And we need to listen to Delia about this. she really knows a lot. But just a brief, quick thought here. I was out hunting on a place called High Mesa between Gunnison and Montrose with my father-in-law about 40 years ago. We pulled into the parking spot just as a rancher was getting his horses and his mules out of the trailer, and he walked over to me. He was friendly at first, but then he said, "By the way, we have this staked out as our hunting area, and we don't want anybody else here." And I said, "Wait a minute, isn't this public land?" And he said, "Well, yes, it's public, but if you stay here, you're going to come back to a shot-up radiator." And anyway, I won't go into the unpleasantries, but I out-bluffed him. But the whole time I hunted that area, I was looking over my shoulder, thinking maybe he's around here. And so that's, but we can deal with these ranchers. I mean, they're not dumb. They're smart people, I hope.
Let me just wrap up that thought a little bit, and I think it's really important what Shepard said, in that 70% of the West Slope are public lands. Isn't that an amazing concept? That means that you can walk out on those lands, whether you're from New York City or from Florida or from Colorado, those lands are yours. That's an amazing idea. Importantly, we can coexist. It doesn't have to be the rancher or the hunter and wolves. We can have all of those elements and have a healthier landscape for it. But we have to be respectful of each other and really perhaps change this mindset in one of collaboration and coexistence, so that we recognize that we can all use the land if we use it sustainably. So, more questions, please.
I was told by an outfitter in the Gila Wilderness, and this is with the Mexican wolves, that they were breeding with the coyotes.
Yes.
And that they're creating mutant species. Listen to those strange howls, it's not right. Can you tell me, is this a myth? And is it a fear also with the great wolves?
No, they're running in packs now. Go to 119.
They might be able to answer that better than I can, but it is not a myth. Wolves can interbreed with coyotes, And it has happened, it's happened in the eastern United States.
There is no evidence. And I like to go back to the evidence. I like to go back to the science. I don't like anecdote. It doesn't suit my lifestyle well at all. There is no evidence that in the West there is any interbreeding of wolves and coyotes. The wolves, there's 113 wolves in Mexican gray wolves right now. And they keep very good track of those wolves. Genetically, they have had a really intense breeding program to try to make sure that there's as little inbreeding as possible. So unequivocally, there is no evidence that Mexican gray wolves are interbreeding with coyotes.
I'll just, there is with the red wolf in the east.
Yes.
And that's a big threat to the red wolf population, which is a much smaller subspecies.